The story opens with the protagonist reflecting on her marriage, a union that, while once passionate, has grown predictable and routine. She observes her husband's subtle distance, the quiet evenings spent scrolling through his phone, the lack of spark in their conversations, and the diminishing intimacy that once defined their relationship. This isn't about a failing marriage in the extreme sense. Rather, it's about a woman who craves excitement, novelty, and a sense of being desired again. Her thoughts oscillate between affection for her husband and frustration with the monotony that now colors their life together. As her husband's birthday approaches, she feels an urge to do something extraordinary, something that could break the cycle of routine and remind them both of the fire that first brought them together. At first, her ideas are conventional. A surprise dinner, a weekend getaway, perhaps a thoughtful gift. But the thought of these gestures feels insufficient. They are too safe, too expected. She wants a surprise that is thrilling, something that carries risk yet promises intense emotional payoff. She begins to daydream, imagining scenarios that are daring, even forbidden. It's in these fantasies that the idea strikes. What if she could orchestrate a surprise that is wildly intimate, a personal experience designed just for him, one that goes beyond anything she has done before? Initially, the idea feels like a mischievous game, a harmless indulgence, a way to spice up their relationship without truly stepping over any boundaries. But as she contemplates it, the thrill comes with an undercurrent of guilt. She questions herself, is this truly innocent, or is it a betrayal of trust? She tells herself it is a gift for him, a way to rekindle passion, but deep down, she recognizes that the act is laden with moral ambiguity. The more she thinks about it, the more the plan begins to consume her imagination. She envisions the reactions, the surprise in his eyes, and even the tension that will fill the room as the evening unfolds. Amid these reflections, her inner conflict grows. She struggles to reconcile her role as a loving wife with her desire for excitement and novelty. The part of her that seeks thrill begins to overshadow the part that fears consequences. She rationalizes her choice, convincing herself that a carefully orchestrated secret plan could be executed without harming anyone or destabilizing their marriage. The tension between curiosity, excitement, and guilt forms the emotional core of this opening act. By the end of part 1, the protagonist has committed herself to the idea. She has moved from idle fantasy to deliberate planning, setting the stage for a journey that will test the boundaries of desire, trust, and morality. The reader is drawn into her conflicted mindset, feeling both the allure of the thrill she seeks and the ominous shadow of potential consequences. The story establishes not only the premise of the birthday surprise, but also the complex psychological landscape that will drive the narrative forward. With the initial idea firmly planted in her mind, the protagonist begins the delicate process of planning. The thrill of secrecy pulses through her thoughts. Every detail she arranges feels like a step deeper into a world of temptation and moral ambiguity. She knows that the success of her plan depends not only on the element of surprise, but also on complete discretion. The tension begins to mount as she navigates the logistics of a secret operation, turning ordinary actions into small exercises in subterfuge. Her first step is research. Late at night, she sits at her laptop, scanning forums, reviews, and discreet advertisements. Each professional she considers becomes a careful evaluation. She scrutinizes their reputation, professionalism, and ability to maintain confidentiality. She develops a checklist: reliability, discretion, and a persona that can blend seamlessly into her plan. The act of researching is thrilling and dangerous, stirring a mixture of excitement, nervousness, and guilt. Each click of the mouse feels like stepping further down a path that might be irreversible. Simultaneously, she begins the logistical planning at home. She decides which rooms will be used, what atmosphere to create, and how to make the evening feel intimate and special. Candles, soft music, and a carefully chosen meal are all part of the setup, masking the true nature of the surprise with layers of romantic expectation. Even small details, a lightly perfumed living room, dimmed lights, a subtle fragrance are meticulously considered. Each preparation step, while mundane on the surface, carries the undercurrent of her secret intentions, creating an almost cinematic tension. However, the more she plans, the more fear creeps in. She worries about accidental discovery, her husband walking in too early, a neighbor noticing unusual activity, or even digital traces like emails or messages being intercepted. These anxieties heighten the stakes, and the story delves into her psychological state. Her mind is a battlefield of excitement and paranoia. Every plan she makes is tempered by the nagging thought that exposure could ruin everything, shattering trust and possibly even her marriage. Amid these practicalities, the protagonist also explores her own emotions. She reflects on her desire for novelty, questioning why she feels the need for such an extreme measure. She examines her marriage, recognizing both its strengths and its limitations. There is a growing awareness that her actions may not only affect her husband, but also reveal something deep about her own character, a willingness to pursue pleasure and thrill, even at the edge of morality. These introspections give the story emotional depth, allowing readers to see her as a complex individual rather than a mere agent of temptation. As Part 2 closes, the plan begins to take tangible form. She has identified the professional, arranged the timing, and orchestrated the environment. The excitement of what is to come is palpable, yet a shadow of unease lingers. The reader senses the impending collision of desire, secrecy, and consequence, setting the stage for the dramatic tension and emotional complexity that will unfold in Part 3. Her internal conflict, between thrill, love, and guilt, has never been sharper, leaving the audience both curious and apprehensive about what will happen next. Part 4 marks the story's emotional and moral climax. The carefully orchestrated surprise finally unfolds. The protagonist's meticulous planning has led to this moment, yet nothing can fully prepare her for the intensity of the reality. As the evening begins, the atmosphere she has created, a blend of soft lighting, gentle music, and subtle romantic cues, sets the stage for what should feel like a controlled, intimate experience. Every detail, from the scent of the room to the arrangement of candles, is designed to heighten anticipation and create a sense of extraordinary occasion. Yet the tension is palpable. The secret she carries weighs heavily on her conscience. When the professional arrives, the protagonist's nerves spike. Their presence is not merely transactional. They carry an aura of confidence, professionalism, and charisma that immediately changes the energy in the room. The protagonist's mind races with conflicting emotions: excitement at seeing her plan come to life, guilt for crossing boundaries, and anxiety over what her husband's reaction might be. The air is thick with anticipation, and even minor sounds, a door closing, a footstep, a shift in tone, feel magnified, underscoring the precariousness of her secret. Her husband's reaction adds another layer of complexity. Initially confused, he quickly begins to understand the intention behind the surprise. His curiosity is piqued, and he engages cautiously, navigating the unfamiliar territory with a mix of intrigue and hesitation. The wife watches him closely, feeling a blend of pride for the thrill she orchestrated and fear over how far things might escalate. It is in this delicate balance that the story explores the emotional and psychological tension of human desire, the unpredictable nature of passion, and the vulnerability that comes with intimacy. As the encounter progresses, unexpected dynamics emerge. The professional's presence is not purely mechanical. Subtle interactions, gestures, and conversations introduce layers of emotional complexity. The protagonist finds herself experiencing emotions she did not anticipate: jealousy, protectiveness, or even a strange exhilaration. She begins to recognize that this is no longer just a carefully planned surprise, but a situation that challenges her own boundaries, her understanding of desire, and her control over the evening. The ethical and emotional stakes have escalated dramatically. A turning point occurs when a small but significant line is crossed. This moment forces the protagonist to confront the reality of her actions. What began as a secret, thrilling game has evolved into a complex web of intimacy, trust, and moral ambiguity. The reader experiences her internal conflict viscerally. The excitement of the situation clashes violently with guilt and fear of consequences. Her husband's reactions, the professional's demeanor, and her own emotions converge, creating a tense, almost electric atmosphere where every choice matters and the potential for regret looms large. Part 4 ends with the protagonist acutely aware of the stakes she has set into motion. The planned surprise has become something far more emotionally charged than she anticipated, and the aftermath, how her husband, the professional, and she herself will navigate the consequences, remains uncertain. The story reaches a moment of heightened tension, where desire, morality, and emotional vulnerability intersect, setting the stage for the profound fallout and introspection that will follow in Part 5. Part 5 delves into the immediate emotional and relational fallout following the orchestrated surprise. The evening has ended, but the tension lingers, now shifting from anticipation to reflection. The protagonist finds herself alone with her thoughts, replaying the events of the night in meticulous detail. Every glance, every gesture, and every word from her husband and the professional is analyzed repeatedly. The thrill she once felt now mixes with guilt, anxiety, and a creeping sense of vulnerability. She begins to understand that the consequences of her actions extend far beyond the evening itself. Her husband's response adds another layer of complexity. Depending on how you want the story to unfold, he may be confused, aroused, or quietly contemplative. In any case, the protagonist realizes that the dynamics of their relationship have shifted. Even if her husband outwardly appears accepting, she senses that a subtle tension now exists. A line has been crossed that cannot be ignored. The night's events have introduced new emotions into their marriage: curiosity, suspicion, and perhaps a fragile intimacy that is tinged with risk. She recognizes that while the surprise was intended as a gift, it has become a catalyst for change, revealing vulnerabilities in both herself and her husband. Simultaneously, the protagonist faces an intense internal conflict. She questions her motives. Was this about her husband, or about satisfying her own desire for excitement? She confronts the truth that her actions were fueled by more than just love. They were also driven by curiosity, thrill, and a longing to feel powerful and desired. This self-examination is uncomfortable but necessary, as it forces her to consider the ethics of her behavior and the boundaries of trust within her marriage. Her feelings are tangled: exhilaration at the night's success, shame for the secrecy and deception, and uncertainty about how her husband truly feels. Practical and social consequences begin to emerge. Even in the privacy of her home, the protagonist is aware of the fragility of secrecy. The professional's discretion, while assumed, is not guaranteed. There is a constant undercurrent of anxiety. What if someone discovers what happened? What if the night is not as private as she believed? These fears amplify her introspection, making her acutely aware that one impulsive decision can have far-reaching consequences. Emotionally, Part 5 explores the ripple effect of crossing moral and relational boundaries. The protagonist feels a mixture of empowerment and vulnerability. She has orchestrated an audacious act, yet she is confronted with the sobering realization that thrill comes with risk. The story emphasizes the complexity of human desire, showing that even acts intended to strengthen intimacy can lead to tension, self-doubt, and unexpected consequences. By the end of Part 5, the protagonist stands at a crossroads. She must navigate the delicate terrain of her own emotions, her husband's perceptions, and the lingering consequences of her actions. The reader is left with a sense of unresolved tension, empathy for her curiosity and audacity, coupled with anticipation for how she and her husband will ultimately confront the changes wrought by the night's events. This sets the stage for Part 6, where reflection, revelation, and moral reckoning will bring the story to its conclusion. Part 6 serves as the story's emotional and moral resolution, where the protagonist must confront the consequences of her actions and come to terms with the complex aftermath of the surprise she orchestrated. The night of excitement and tension is over, but its effects linger, shaping her thoughts, her perceptions of her marriage, and her understanding of herself. She finds herself alone, perhaps in the quiet of the morning or late at night, reflecting deeply on the events and the choices that led her here. The protagonist begins by examining her motivations. She acknowledges the thrill, curiosity, and desire that drove her to arrange the encounter, realizing that her actions were as much about exploring her own limits as they were about creating pleasure for her husband. This self-awareness is uncomfortable but necessary. She confronts the moral ambiguity of her decisions, understanding that even when intentions are framed as love or playfulness, crossing boundaries of trust can carry profound emotional consequences. This reflection allows the story to explore themes of human desire, temptation, and ethical complexity, giving readers insight into the nuanced psychology behind her choices. Her relationship with her husband is now viewed through a new lens. Depending on the narrative tone, she may notice subtle changes in his behavior: curiosity, hesitation, or even a newfound intimacy tinged with awkwardness. The protagonist realizes that their dynamic has shifted irreversibly. Even if no words are exchanged about the night's events, there is an unspoken tension, a recognition that both partners have entered uncharted emotional territory. She may feel a combination of relief, guilt, and fear. Relief that the immediate drama did not explode into conflict, guilt over the deception she orchestrated, and fear of long-term consequences for the marriage she values. In addition to marital reflection, she considers her personal growth and limits. The experience has revealed desires she had not fully confronted, as well as the risks inherent in acting impulsively on curiosity and fantasy. She understands that human emotion is rarely simple or neatly contained. Pleasure, guilt, love, and fear often coexist, each influencing decisions and shaping outcomes. This realization fosters a bittersweet sense of maturity. She has learned something essential about herself and the delicate balance between desire and responsibility. The story closes with a moment of ambiguous resolution. The protagonist may choose to openly discuss the night with her husband, seek to restore equilibrium, or quietly carry the secret as a private lesson in the complexities of intimacy. The ending emphasizes reflection over action, allowing the emotional and moral consequences to resonate. It leaves readers with a sense of tension and realism. Choices have been made, boundaries tested, and the ripples of one impulsive decision extend far beyond the moment it occurred. Ultimately, Part 6 underscores the story's central themes: the interplay of desire and morality, the fragility of trust, and the emotional consequences of secrecy. By combining introspection with relational awareness, the narrative concludes on a note that is both thoughtful and provocative, inviting readers to reflect on their own perceptions of fidelity, passion, and the subtle boundaries that govern human relationships. The protagonist emerges from the experience changed, more self-aware, more cautious, and more deeply attuned to the consequences of her choices.